We often believe that reading someone's mind requires intuition, psychology, or even guesswork. But the truth is, we don't need to be mind readers. We just need to be question askers. When we ask the right questions, we invite someone to open the door to their world. And if we listen with our hearts, not just our ears, their truth unfolds before us. Curiosity is the opposite of judgment. It's not about having the right answer. It's about having the courage to ask the right question. When we approach someone with genuine curiosity, what we're really saying is, you matter enough for me to slow down and learn about you. Think about it. When was the last time someone leaned in and asked you a question, not because they wanted information, but because they wanted connection? That feeling stays with us. Curiosity isn't invasive when it comes from the heart. It's a gift. Most of us walk through life assuming we already know who people are. We see their titles, their roles, their masks, and we think we've figured them out. But curiosity says, wait, there's more to this person. There's a story underneath what I see. And when we dare to ask, that story begins to unfold. Curiosity unlocks hidden truths, hopes, fears, dreams, and even wounds that people often keep tucked away. Without curiosity, those truths remain locked, and we remain strangers even to the people closest to us. Silence can feel safe, but it rarely tells the truth. When we stay silent, we leave others guessing, filling in the blanks with their own assumptions. And assumptions almost always miss the mark. If we really want to know what's in someone's heart, we have to invite them to share their story. Stories are how human beings have always made sense of the world. Long before we had books, podcasts, or social media, we had storytelling. Around fires and kitchens, at dinner tables, people have always revealed themselves through the tales they tell. Not through polished speeches or perfect answers, but through the raw, unfiltered way they share what happened to them and how it shaped them. When someone tells you about their childhood, they're not just talking about events, they're showing you the lens through which they see life. When they describe a heartbreak, they're not only revisiting the pain, they're revealing the way they define love, trust, and betrayal. When they share their proudest moment, they're giving you a glimpse into what they value most, what makes their soul feel alive. This is why asking questions that invite stories is so powerful. Instead of asking, "Are you happy?" a question that usually ends with a yes or no, try asking, "Tell me about a time in your life when you felt most alive." That one question unlocks a story. And in that story, you learn more about the person than you could in 1,000 surface-level conversations. The truth is, silence often hides shame, fear, or the belief that no one cares enough to listen. But stories are bridges. They create pathways between two minds, two hearts. They say, here's where I've been, here's what I've seen, here's who I am becoming. And when we listen to those stories, not just hearing words, but holding space for the person telling them, we don't just learn what's in their mind. We glimpse their humanity. We see the layers that silence could never reveal. So if you want to know someone deeply, don't settle for their silence. Ask the kind of questions that draw out a story, then lean in. Because stories carry truth, and truth is what builds real connection. If you want to understand someone's mind, you have to go deeper than surface details. A person's favorite color or their daily routine doesn't tell you who they are. It only tells you what they do. Who they are is hidden in their values and beliefs, and the right questions are the keys that unlock them. For example, asking someone, "What matters most to you right now?" is far more revealing than asking, "What do you do for a living?" Jobs can change, titles can be taken away, but what matters most to someone, family, freedom, integrity, faith, creativity, that's the foundation of their being. Values are like a compass. They guide choices, influence relationships, and determine how people show up in the world. If you know someone's values, you begin to understand not just what they think, but why they think it. And when you uncover the why, you've entered the heart of their mind. Beliefs, on the other hand, reveal how a person interprets the world. When you ask questions like, what do you believe about love? Or what do you believe about failure? You don't just get an answer, you get a window into the lessons life has taught them. Some beliefs are empowering, rooted in hope and resilience. Others are limiting, shaped by pain or betrayal. But all of them are meaningful. They explain why someone reacts the way they do, why they trust or don't trust so easily, why they hold on or let go. Here's the thing. Most people never get asked questions that touch their values and beliefs. They get asked what they do, where they live, how they're doing, but not who they are. And yet, when someone finally dares to ask, it feels like a sigh of relief. It feels like being seen. Imagine asking someone, what kind of person do you most admire? Or what do you hope people will remember about you? Those questions don't just bring words, they bring truth. They reveal the invisible frame. They work shaping their choices, fears, and dreams. So if you want to read someone's mind, skip the surface questions and aim for the ones that matter. Ask about values, ask about beliefs, because inside those answers you'll discover not just what a person thinks, but who they are at their core. Most of us grow up believing that communication is about what we say, our words, our arguments, our ability to persuade. But the truth is, the deepest form of connection doesn't come from speaking, it comes from listening. Listening is not waiting for your turn to talk. It's not nodding politely while secretly rehearsing the next thing you want to say. Real listening is presence. It's choosing to set aside your ego, your agenda, and even your impatience to enter someone else's world without trying to fix it or judge it. When you ask someone a meaningful question, their answer isn't always immediate. Sometimes they stumble, sometimes they circle around, sometimes they need silence before their truth arrives. And if we're too busy rushing, interrupting, or filling the gaps with our own voice, we miss the very thing we were seeking, the essence of who they are. Listening is powerful because it communicates something words alone cannot. You matter. I see you. Your story deserves space. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly listened to without someone interrupting, correcting, or drifting away into distraction? That kind of presence feels almost sacred. It heals, it builds trust, it creates safety. Here's the irony. People reveal more when they feel listened to than when they feel pressured. If someone senses you're not really paying attention, they'll retreat behind half-truths and small talk. But if they sense you're truly with them, attentive, curious, and open, they'll risk honesty. They'll share the stories and beliefs they normally keep hidden. Idioms, the best response after someone shares is not another story, not advice, not a quick solution. It's silence. It's a nod. It's the steady presence that says, I don't need to fix this. I just may. For many of us, questions have carried a shadow. Maybe we've experienced questions that felt like an interrogation, where someone wasn't seeking connection but control. Questions asked in suspicion with an agenda don't open hearts, they shut them down. But here's the difference. When a question is born out of genuine care, it feels completely different. Instead of feeling like we're being cornered, we feel seen. Instead of feeling judged, we feel valued. The intention behind the question is what determines whether it builds a wall or a bridge. When you ask someone, how are you really? And then pause long enough to hear the answer, you're offering a gift. You're telling them, I'm not here to catch you in a lie. I'm here because I want to hold space for your truth. That's the kind of question that disarms fear and builds trust. Trust doesn't happen because we declare it. It happens because we demonstrate it. Every thoughtful question we ask says, I want to know you, not the version of you the world sees, but the you underneath it all. And when someone feels safe enough to answer honestly, a bond forms that no amount of talking could ever create. It's important to remember, though, that tone and timing matter. A well-intentioned question asked in the wrong way can still feel like judgment. For example, why would you do that? Often sounds accusatory. But Can you help me understand what led you there? Invites openness. The difference is compassion. The first puts someone on the defensive. The second invites them into trust. When we ask questions rooted in kindness, we're telling the other person, you don't have to hide here. You don't have to pretend. I'm not digging for dirt. I'm reaching for your humanity. And slowly, those walls people carry begin to lower. In truth, the most meaningful connections aren't built on shared answers, but on shared trust. Q. Questions, when asked with love and respect, create a rhythm where two people can safely meet in the middle. So if you want to understand someone's mind, don't ask questions to trap them. Ask questions to free them. Trust grows in that space. And once trust is there, hearts and minds open wide. If you want someone to open up, you can't just stand on the sidelines with your arms crossed, waiting for them to spill their truth. Connection doesn't work that way. People open up when they sense safety, and safety often comes when we're willing to go first. That's where vulnerability comes in. Vulnerability is saying, here's a piece of me that isn't polished. Here's the part I usually protect. It's sharing not just the victories, but also the struggles, the failures, the doubts. And while it feels risky, it's also the very thing that makes others feel safe enough to take the same risk. Think about it. If you ask someone about their fears, but you never admit to your own, your question can feel lopsided. But if you say, I've always struggled with the fear of not being enough. What about you? What's a fear you've wrestled with? The tone shifts. You've moved from interrogator to companion. Vulnerability turns a question into a doorway. And suddenly, both of you are standing on the same side. The truth is, people are far more likely to reveal their authentic selves when they sense that you're being authentic too. Walls come down when they realize, I'm not the only one who feels this way. Vulnerability says, me too. And in that moment, isolation melts into connection. And yes, it's risky. Vulnerability can feel terrifying because it opens us up to rejection or misunderstanding. But here's the paradox. The very thing we fear, being judged for showing our true self, is the same thing that builds the deepest bonds when we share it. When someone tells you your story, you don't just see their mind, you see their courage. And when you respond by sharing a piece of your own truth, you're saying, I trust you enough to let you see me too, that mutual exchange. We live in a world that fears silence. We fill every pause with noise, words, distractions, explanations, because silence feels uncomfortable. But when it comes to truly understanding someone, silence is not the enemy. It's the secret ingredient. After you ask someone a meaningful question, the instinct is to rush, to jump in, to soften the weight of it. We think we're helping when we fill the gap with, you don't have to answer if it's too hard, or what I meant was. But often those interruptions rob the moment of its depth. Because here's the truth. Silence is where honesty gathers its courage. Think about it. When you've been asked something that touches your heart, something about your fears, your hopes, or your pain, do you answer right away? Usually not. You pause, you breathe, you sift through what's safe to say and what's true to say. That space between the question and the answer is where the real work happens. If we can learn to hold silence gently, to let it breathe without rushing to fill it, people will almost always go deeper. Their first answer may be polite, rehearsed, or safe. But if you give them time, if you let the silence stretch, they often move past the surface and into the raw, unpolished truth. Silence also communicates something words cannot: patience. It says, I'm not here to hurry you. I can sit with your discomfort, your hesitation, your processing. And that kind of patience builds trust. It tells the other person, your truth matters enough for me to wait for it. In fact, some of the most profound answers don't come immediately. They emerge after the pause, sometimes shaky, sometimes tearful, sometimes whispered, but always honest. And those are the moments when you're not just reading someone's mind, you're being invited into their soul. So the next time you ask a question that matters, resist the urge to rescue the silence. Let it sit. Let it breathe, because silence is an emptiness, it's space, and in that space, truth often finds its way to the surface. Questions are powerful. They can be like keys that unlock hidden doors, but they can also be like locks that shut them tight. The difference isn't just in the words we choose, it's in the intention, the tone, and the timing. We've all experienced the sting of a poorly framed question. Maybe someone asked, "Why are you still single?" Or, "What's wrong with you?" These aren't really questions. They're judgments disguised as curiosity. They don't open the door to honesty. They slam it shut. They make us retreat, guarding our truth more tightly than before. That's the risk of careless questioning. It doesn't just fail to connect, it creates distance. When someone feels interrogated, cornered, or exposed, their instinct is to protect themselves, not share themselves. And once that trust is broken, it can be hard to rebuild. But thoughtful, compassionate questions do the opposite. Instead of, "Why did you do that?" which sounds like blame, we can ask, "What was going through your mind when you made that choice?" Instead of, "What's wrong with you?" we can ask, "What have you been carrying that feels heavy right now?" The words may seem small, but the difference is profound. One shames, the other invites. This is why sensitivity matters. When we step into someone else's heart with our questions, we're stepping into sacred ground. We have to tread lightly with empathy. Not every door needs to be kicked open. Some need to be knocked on gently, giving the other person the choice to open it or keep it closed. And here's the truth. Asking the wrong question doesn't make us bad. It makes us human. We all stumble. We all misstep. The key is to notice, to apologize if needed, and to learn how to ask better next time. Because when we lead with compassion, and even mistakes can be softened. So remember this, questions can either open hearts or close them. If you want to truly read someone's mind, ask with gentleness, ask with love, and ask with patience. Reading someone's mind isn't about magic tricks or manipulation. It's about presence, patience, and compassion. It's about daring to ask the questions that matter and being brave enough to truly listen to the answers. We don't need X-ray vision to understand the people in our lives. We need curiosity. We need to honor their stories. We need to lean into their values, listen without rushing, and build trust through the questions we ask. We need to show up with vulnerability, hold the power of silence, and choose our words with care. Because in the end, it isn't about getting inside someone's head. It's about meeting them in their heart. It's about creating the kind of connection where someone feels safe enough to reveal their truth, piece by piece, word by word. 5 intentional questions can open doors we never thought possible. They can take us past the surface and into the soul. And when we dare to ask them with love, what we discover is this: people don't really need us to read their minds. They just need us to care enough to ask,